Hello, everyone. We're going to be doing a fireside chat. No fire, a little warm out. All right. We're going to be talking a little bit more practically about driving mission outcomes with AI. I'm Diamond. I'm the Director of Engineering and AI at Datadog, working across our AI agents and experimental products. I've been in AI for quite a long time. And I'm very excited to be here with Anil Chaudhry, Senior Advisor for AI in the US government, who brings more than 2 decades of experience driving AI and tech innovation across defense, intelligence, and national security. Thank you so much for listening to us, and thank you, Neil, for being here.
No, thank you so much. So first of all, I'd like to say that, for a couple of my government colleagues here, they were like, dude, we see you on the circuit quite frequently lately. Are you planning to leave government anytime soon? The answer is no. This was just a confluence of factors related to the 6 weeks lapse in appropriation, and people had to juggle their schedule around. So no, just because I'm on the circuit doesn't mean I'm leaving government soon. So that was the big thing. And the second thing I'd really like to say is the way I'm going to stay in government for the long haul is I'm the only one wearing a tie here.
Thought about it. I couldn't find one, actually. I didn't know where it was. All right, Neil, you've built a career around making complex emerging technologies easier to understand and operationalize. How's that perspective shaped the way you approach AI adoption in large mission-driven organizations?
So, I'll probably date myself here, where when I first joined the Army in 1992, we were still using typewriters. And the transformative moment for my generation was email. Obviously now it's AI for my children, but for us it was, oh my God, we got email. We don't have to, put stuff in a brown envelope and send it in our office mail to somebody. So, whenever I think about technology, I always think about, the precepts that, Claire Martoroma, one of our previous federal CIOs talked about quite a lot, which was it has to be simple, seamless, and secure. And those are the 3 tenets. If your product can't be simple, seamless, and secure, 1, folks won't use it efficiently, and 2, they won't use it effectively. And that's, the sort of guiding principles I always take with, looking at complex problems, even, in AI that says, is the solution simple? Is the solution seamless to implement? And is from a organizational perspective, especially in highly regulated spaces that I operate, is the solution secure as well?
Yeah, and I started my career at Lockheed doing defense tech stuff, so I've also seen quite a lot change because when you're inside SCIFs, when you're inside these kind of older tech places sometimes, even when a lot is changing in the commercial world, it's not always changing quite as fast inside the defense space or in the government space. And from your experience leading AI initiatives, what kind of foundational architectural elements are critical for integrating AI into these kind of legacy systems that we might be seeing?
So, there's a tech answer to that, and then there's a business answer to that. And where I do find success, where, with some of my peers, is that I can talk business to tech folks and I can talk tech speak to business folks. And what I really talk about is, we used to grow up on this adage of people, process, technology. And now the framework has evolved to people, process, and platforms, where we first start with what are the platforms you're going to use. You can't have 30 different platforms in an organization. You have to pick 1, 2, or maybe 3 best in class and just work with those. So, and then it's, the people, right? It's how are they adapting to that platform? How are they using the platform? And typically, an example I'll give you is if you make things too difficult for folks, right? I had a young intern working for me just 2 summers ago, and we were implementing a AI solution. And we had put so many controls on it that the AI solution became almost meaningless. And I just saw this young, innovative professional take out their camera, take a picture of the screen, with the data and the table on it, and press a button using a commercial AI application convert that screenshot into a data table that they email to themselves, just because we made it too hard for them to print and do anything with that data. And all of a sudden now you have is organizational IP that is in the wild, and we didn't even know about it. The person got their job done. They gave us the answer. Your range of answers is this, but the data that was used to get that answer is out there because we didn't make it simple for them to work for us.
Yeah, access is very important. I think it's one of these things we see even on the commercial side as well, right? Where you have security teams that might try to put a lot of controls in place and make it so that the safest thing to do is not to ship, right? And people will get around that if you don't give them the right building blocks. So responsible AI, though, we're talking about security and putting controls in place. In these kind of highly regulated operational environments, what challenges come with deploying AI?
So the biggest challenge that comes with deploying AI is managing data. And not managing data in terms of bits and bytes, but some of the challenges that I face even with some of my peers, they start talking FISMA, FITARA, they'll throw out all these acronyms, right? And about some data. And then I have to point out to them, you just released this data set on data.gov. Why are you making me take 7 different controls for data that's already publicly available? So it's that sort of sometimes cognitive dissonance that you have to work through, and you really have to ask, your leadership, what are those crown jewels in the organization that need to get protected? What are some of the other information that it's okay to keep secure, but you don't have to guard it? And what is the information, because you already posted it to your website, you can let go? Having those discussions so that what you're not trying to do is control 100% of your data. You're only really focused on your crown jewels, and then you don't have that alarm fatigue. Every time somebody pulls data from a website that you have already released to the public, somebody from the security team is reaching out saying, what did you do? Well, I just went to our website from a public, from my own home computer. What do you want me to say? So it's that sort of cognitive dissonance when we're talking about AI, you really need to understand what are those crown jewels and how do you protect those crown jewels? And, by proxy, some of that output that, that cognition output that you're getting from that recommendation or whatnot, from that, large language model, from that AI, from your crown jewels, how do you protect that IP? So it's really not about protecting data anymore. The conversation's focused around protecting IP.
Yeah, having the right monitoring in place as well, so you can actually know if you're protecting it appropriately, all that kind of fun stuff. I'm also very jealous of folks working within government now that can start to use things like LLMs that have been brought in. Having to code in a skiff was pretty painful as well. Hopefully that's becoming easier.
No, it is becoming easier. And the interesting thing about government is a lot of folks don't realize it, but it's a very innovative space. And every time everything is working well, you never hear about it.
Right.
You only hear about it when things break. But conversely, in the private sector, you only hear about when things are working well, not when anything breaks. So you have this bias where you say private sector is doing all these wonderful things, but it's only a subset of private sector companies that are doing wonderful things you hear about, not everybody else. And conversely, in government, you only hear about the bad things. You say government is only doing bad things. But a lot of innovation is happening in government with the understanding that, one, everybody in government is focused on public service. So we don't have a profit motive. What we have is this mandate to serve the public, right? So that means that what the type of work we do on is giving benefits to a widow, making sure that some child with cancer gets the appropriate health care because their Medicare plan is correctly, done, that we also have children that don't go hungry because they get the food service stamps, which is a different problem than, I got matched on a social media platform with my ex-girlfriend. So two different sets of problems, so the risk that we take is also slightly different. So we may be half a step behind private sector in implementation, but it's purposeful just because of the actual harms that can result from being too forward-looking.
Yeah, different kind of marketing, different kind of positioning, for sure.
Yes.
So as we think about these kind of missions for what we are doing within the government, when outcomes are tied to mission effectiveness, how do you really evaluate whether these AI initiatives are delivering real impact, right? Everyone wants to grab AI, everyone wants to bring it into their product, everyone wants to bring it into their system. How do we know if it's working?
So the short answer is right now we probably don't. And there are times when, yes, I'll take on an AI initiative because it'll get my bosses off my back, right? And there are a lot of people here who also sort of look at that. We'll call it a proof of concept. But the core at the end of whether or not your project was successful is whether you scale it, whether people actually use it. And sometimes it's not this big transformative AI thing that you need to do. It's something simple. And I'll give you an example where one of the things that we did with a bunch of our administrative staff that have the responsibility for sort of doing, for travel planning and whether it makes sense for somebody from Ohio to come to DC for a meeting or somebody from DC to go to Ohio for a meeting, right? That you can't do virtually. So that takes, that'll take about half their day. Now we actually taught them how to use prompts in large language models to be able to do that analysis on the fly so that they can tell their bosses which answer, which option is better. And it's made their life a lot better. Same thing with, going back to travel, right? Voucher processing. Sometimes we get this interesting space where, 16 cents and all of a sudden you're spending 16 hours trying to resolve a 16-cent discrepancy. And we're having our AI models actually really work through that to say, is that something that we need to just be okay with? So there are these little things that you can do to help adaptability. Doesn't have to be this grand AI project, but ultimately it's, are we able to use organizational data effectively to solve a problem that if we had the resources, we would hire a high school intern to do.
Yep.
And if we can do that, that's a really successful implementation of an AI technology.
Yeah, and really having those KPIs well defined. So let's talk, last question, kind of future. Where are we going? Looking ahead, how do you see AI evolving across these mission critical environments? What should leaders like the group here be prioritizing today?
So, one of the things about AI today, which a lot of people haven't internalized, is it's not a 3-year cycle, like we did with infrastructure upgrades. It's not an 18-month cycle like we used to do with, Gordon Moore and, with computing. What it is a 6 to 7 month cycle. So every 6 to 7 months, cognition is doubling in our foundational AI models. And the thing is, what are you doing today to keep up with that pace of technology? So the idea that you had today, if you're executing it 6 months from now, you actually need to go back to drawing board and say, is this still the right approach? And even with all these projects that I do, it goes back to how do we really reevaluate the KPIs and the metrics and the cost about 2 weeks before we kick off. Not, although we did planning 8 months ago, when it comes time to push, we revalidate everything because the tech has changed, the costing has changed, everything has changed every 6 months.
Absolutely.
You need to understand that.
Things are changing fast. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Neil.
No,
Appreciate
thank you
it.
so much. Always a pleasure.